real estate and they see money sign. That to me is not at all the case. I see real estate and I see an immense amount of risk.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Real Estate Investors Club podcast. I'm here with David Gans from Westmount Capital. And we did a previous episode with David where he kind of took us through some of the common myths that are around creative financing and private lending. Today, I want to get a little bit more from David in terms of, his own story, your own trajectory of how it's been for you navigating this world. And maybe you could also tell us a little bit more specifically about Westmount Capital. And then through that, we will get into how someone should be assessing a private lender. So do you want to maybe start out just by telling us, like, really quick, what brought you to Westmount Capital and what's it like, what's your journey been to get there?
Yeah, so we spoke about this in the last episode a bit, but I'll touch on it a bit. I started when I'm 31 now. I started in real estate when I was about 17, 18. I was buying some single family homes and property in Hamilton, Ontario with my brother-in-law. And at that point, we were buying a bunch of stuff and then sold it after we had accumulated a bunch of real estate there. And in parallel, I was working with a real estate developer in Montreal who now is retired, but he was a builder and a real estate developer. So I was doing that. And then about 8-9 years ago, I joined Robbie, Westmount Capital. So I've been on the construction side of things and developer side of things. And then now I'd say for the last, like I said, 8-9 years, I've been on the finance side, which I think is the best, for me, the best side of things. And I have the biggest passion for it and the most, I'm very excited about it. Every day, like I mentioned in the last episode, that every deal, it's a little jigsaw puzzle and you got to put all the pieces together and make it work, or try and make it work at least. So I've been doing it for quite a while. Like I had also mentioned in the last episode, Westmount Capital is an asset-based lender, commercial asset-based lender. So we lend on like multifamily units, buildings, industrial, commercial, all that. We used to do land. Now is a bit tough with the market, but at one point we were doing land, construction financing, renovation financing. But not for like single family homes. This is for just commercial investment purposes. So, I also, like I'd mentioned before in the last episode, we're bridge lenders. So we're meant to be there for 6 to 12 months, short term. Why would someone come to us? Would mainly be the reasoning of flexibility and speed are the number one reasons for sure.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your business model, because I find when, like, let's say one's trying to understand, like, how should I vet and interview a real estate agent? How should I deal with, my accountant? How should I deal with a property manager? Like, very often when we get into investing, it's not clear to us exactly how people make their money, what their incentives are, and what their concerns might be. So maybe if you tell me a little bit about your business model, it's going to become clear for me, what is your priority? How do you get paid? And what looks like a really great deal for you guys?
So those are all great questions. I'd say, so we run like a small, if you want to call it a small fund here. What that basically means is we're one of, I think, maybe between 5 to 15 what I call legitimate private lenders in the greater Montreal area. That are lending. We're not take-back lenders. I think there's a term that some people like to use called take-back lender, where they lend you money with, I want to say, bad intentions, like maybe a higher interest rate or even a lower interest rate, knowing that you'll likely default and they'll be able to take back the property at a reduced price, right? We are the complete opposite of that. So we are the closest thing to like an institutional bank. We have there is no credit committee. Myself and Robbie are the credit committee, the HR people, the people that you call, the underwriters. We're a team. We work together, the two of us. And I'd say that it's really important to understand who you're asking money from or who you're borrowing money from. For us, we ensure that it's a viable project, that the individual's going to have real equity in the deal, that they have liquidity in case things go wrong. We deal with seasoned, experienced people. We do deal with people who are less seasoned, who are less experienced. If the deal is right and we feel like it's well within their capacity, I like taking a chance on people. We've taken a chance on many of our borrowers who at the beginning had almost no real estate, maybe had done one project or two projects. We took a chance on them, asked them to bring a little bit more money to the table at the beginning, given their lack of expertise. But for the vast majority of those people we've taken that chance on, it's paid off. They've done many projects, have become very successful. So for us, to answer your question directly, someone comes here, they ask us for a loan, they're buying a building for $1 million. Maybe we'll give them 75 to 80% loan to cost. We lend them the money, they do their project, and then they repay us. They pay us firstly monthly, interest payments only, and then after 6 months, 6 to 12 months, they go to a conventional bank, whoever it may be, an institutional bank, take out a conventional loan or do a loan with CMHC if it's multifamily, and then we get repaid, and then we redeploy that capital to another borrower.
Mm-hmm. And so what happens? I'm sitting on some money, and I want to say, David, make me money with my money. Can anybody invest with you guys, or where does the capital come from if it's not too indiscreet?
Yeah, so the answer is no. We are not open. We do not publicly solicit investors. We do not accept any new investors. We are a small, very closed loop fund. Only friends and family. We're like 10, 15 investors. It's a very small group of people. And quite honestly, we mainly don't do it. I shouldn't say mainly. One of the reasons we don't do it is also because, like many of the situations that other people are in, we have much more money than we can deploy. I think, thankfully, we have a lot of investors, or should I say the investors we have a lot of money, and are generally either retired people, maybe they have operating businesses, and it's just a vehicle for them to have a return on their investment, a return on their money. And we don't get enough. We don't have enough deals to deploy all the money. I wish we did, but we don't. And I think that we could, but we're extremely careful. As I've mentioned to you in the past, we're extremely careful about who we lend our money to, from a project viability standpoint, from a borrower standpoint, from an experience standpoint. There are so many things we have to look at before we approve a loan. And I would go as far as saying that the majority of loans that come across, or applications that come across our desk, are not approved. I think that's what keeps our default rate extremely, extremely low. So we're kind of like a closed group on the back end side. We're a small team. We have a really, really small investor group. And that's kind of the way we want to keep it. We want to do good loans and get repaid.
All right. And so then tell me, what is an ideal deal? What does an ideal deal look to for you? An ideal deal look like to you guys? Terry walks in off the street. You've never seen me before. You have no idea who I am. And I pitch you something that you're like, yes, I want to do this. What are the things that you're looking at when Terry walks in the door?
Yeah, I would say I'd say experience is the first thing. I think it's really important for us to have confidence that the borrower will get it across the finish line. There are a lot of people who come here who have money, have liquidity, but they don't know anything about real estate. They don't have any contacts in real estate. And quite honestly, as much as people say, hey, listen, that guy has money, he's only asking for 75% loan to value. I mean, that sounds fantastic, but if he can't get it across the finish line, it's only going to mean problems for us. Maybe he'll go into default and we'll take the property back, or there'll be issues with payment because he doesn't understand. And I'm not here to in my day-to-day, I'm not there to kind of teach people. They have to kind of do their own learning and then come to us and ask us for a loan. Yeah, I mean, it's important that when somebody comes here, they have the knowledge and understanding of what they're getting themselves involved in. So to give you an example of a deal that I would see now get excited about is a deal actually we're doing right now is it's a 24 units in Hochelaga. They have brought us the building. It is a very dilapidated property. It's in need of major work. The current owner has not done anything to the building for a very long time. So these individuals are going to be buying the building and restoring it, optimizing it, and kind of I would say bringing new units to the borough, to the area of which they're in, which I think is great. There's a huge housing shortage, so that to me is an exciting deal. You know, like the building is dilapidated. The borrowers have experience in this. They have a solid business plan of what their projected costs are going to be, what their projected rents are going to be, what their takeout's going to be. They even stress tested a bit. So if today, I give an example, I mean, today the rates are up, but let's just use a hypothetical example. If the rates are 4%, I think it's important, and I like to see this where borrowers stress test. They say, okay, if the rates go from 4 to 425 to 450, here are the different scenarios of what my refinancing takeout will look at. And I think that's really important because there are a lot of people who come to us and say, oh, you know what, the rates are 4, but I think they're going to go down, or I think they're only going to go up like a little bit. I don't think that's a smart way of looking at things, because I think you should always be prepared for the downside. I don't think you should kind of keep it behind you and say, it's never going to happen, because it definitely can happen. So I think the ideal person is someone who comes with a really good business plan that's well thought out, that's well detailed, that they've spent a lot of time analyzing, putting together, as well as like a deal like that where they feel they're going to bring tremendous value to the property almost immediately. That's a deal that I see and I say, okay, like that's exciting to me. Let's try and work together. Let's try and see if we can come to an agreement on terms.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because maybe I'm going to pull out some details that you didn't cover. You said up front that one of the main things you look for is experience. But let's say Terry doesn't have experience, and I'm going to walk into your office and still wow you. Like, you're going to still be like, you know what? I feel like taking a chance on Terry. What would I have to do to put myself in a position for you to want to do business with me? I think you mentioned having a really solid business plan. Is there something else in terms of, I feel like I have a good project, I have a good deal. How can I pitch to you if I don't have a really long track record?
Yeah, so it is quite honestly, it is difficult. It's a difficult question to answer, because for us, it's extremely important that whomever I present to our investors, I could stand behind. So it's really important that I can stand behind that person and I can say, yeah, you know what, I think this person is going to get to the finish line. They know what they're doing. But like I said to you moments ago, there are people who come here who don't have any experience, have liquidity, are very smart, and have surrounded themselves around the right people, but they don't have experience. I think if someone is that person, like I just mentioned, comes with a really solid business plan, seems very sophisticated in their understanding, their knowledge of real estate, even if they don't have, just because you don't have an experience doesn't mean you don't fully understand. I mean, yes, as you go along, you make mistakes, you'll learn more and you'll become more sophisticated. But I think even on the entry level, as long as you're surrounding yourself by the right people and they're teaching you and you have a basic knowledge and understanding of what getting yourself involved in, you have either an investor or a financial backer, or you yourself, your own money, and you could prove that to me, that's someone who I can take a chance on. We just had a client who actually has a huge operating business, someone who came to me, and they have never bought one single building in their life, but they have a huge operating business and they're dying to get into the business, and they presented to me a huge business plan, more sophisticated actually than some of the people I deal with on a regular basis. And it was a building that was small, but which I wouldn't necessarily always lend on, but given his operating business and how he proved to me, listen, look, I have this big business, I built this business by myself, like I obviously understand the metrics of building a business and what it takes to do that. I have liquidity. I built this business plan. I want to kind of jump in on my 2 feet into real estate. He was somebody who I made an offer to try and do business with, because that's an individual who I'm like, you know what, even if something goes wrong, they've surrounded themselves by the right people. They'll pick up the phone. They'll figure it out. They're creative. They're smart. They're fast. That's the type of person that I'm looking for to work with.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you. That makes it clear. Have you really been listening to the episode, or has your monkey mind been taking you off in one direction or another? Our mental habits can be our biggest assets or our biggest liabilities as we pursue certain goals. For me, the biggest performance gains have always come from training my mind. In my book, Mindful Landlord, I talk about how you can train your mind and how you can apply some of these strategies to your journey in the real estate field. The book is available on Amazon and also on its website, mindfullandlord.com. Now I'll stop evangelizing for the power of mental training and let you get back to the show. So I want to switch tacks a little bit. And, one of the questions that I like to ask on the show, it might be a little bit less adapted, to you who works in-house as a private lender, but we try to get at like what some of the common denominators for success and sacrifice might be. Because, one of my pet peeves of the industry is that, people with their Instagram feeds look like they're balling on day 2. They opened up yesterday, and on day 2, they're, not necessarily private jets, but like expensive vacations and all of these things that make it look really sexy to be in real estate. And one of the questions I like to ask people who come on is, what lifestyle hits maybe did you personally take, or have you seen people take on the way to success? Because it's not true that you decide, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be a real estate investor, and then the money just is pouring in and you don't have to make any sacrifices. So I wonder if you have any kind of sense from personal experience when you were an investor, or one of the common threads that you see with the people who you work with, like what kind of sacrifices are people making on their lifestyle in order to get where they are?
So it's a great question. I would say I have one story or tidbit, I guess I could share from my personal experience. When I was just starting out, like I said, around 17, 18, at that time I was starting to buy stuff with my brother-in-law. And it was a great experience. And right at that moment, that's an example actually of me not knowing one thing about real estate. And I'll never forget this, I went to RBC and they gave me a loan on this house, my brother-in-law, and it was like a new experience for me, and it was great. And it was kind of learned everything really fast from there. But when at that point in time, I was still in school, university, and I wanted to learn more. And a lot of my friends were, like I said, lawyers, doctors, accountants, all these types of people, and they were working at these stages or internships, if you want to call them, and they were getting paid. They weren't getting paid much, but they were getting paid. They had good hours getting paid. In real estate, I found that it was really difficult to find like a mentor or someone who's like willing to give the time of day, especially someone who is like operating a huge business, development business, lending business, whatever it may be. And someone who I met in a job I was doing, like I was earning almost nothing, just like a day-to-day job in school to make a little bit of money. I met them, literally, we almost bumped into each other, started talking. He was a real estate developer. I was interested in real estate, and he offered me an internship. And like my friends, I thought I was going to get paid for the internship. But lo and behold, I was not paid. And I would say that was, at that time, my friends were like, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, you're not getting paid, and you're working there like almost like a 9-to-5 job, and you're going to school, and you're not making any money." I could say that I did that for almost 2 years. I didn't get paid $1. It was like a full-time job. I basically had full-time responsibilities. But I could say hands down, that was one of the best experiences of my life. And I think, allowed me to be where I am today. I think that I'm doing okay today, and I'm very fortunate and to be where I am. But I think that those 2 years really shaped me. So I think that that was a bit of a sacrifice for me at that time. I was making no money whatsoever and in school. So it was, I wouldn't say like I was struggling or anything for those 2 years. Thank God my parents were there to support me because I was really young. But I think sometimes you have to make those sacrifices and say, you know what, like, yes, I'm not getting paid. But this individual is willing to give me the time of day and teach me give me all his knowledge and ask him any question and work on things and go into meetings that I would never be privy to ever at that age, for sure. And I was sitting there and listening, taking notes. And so to me, that was a sacrifice, but I think it paid off in the end. It was well worth it.
On a great answer, David. Actually, I think you're the first person who's come on the show to mention that. But I think you're making such a great point, which is that, sometimes these like mentorship opportunities do translate into unpaid hours, right? Or hours where you're paid at a discounted rate, or you're working entry level. For a lot of people, real estate's a second career. Like, I think for listening to you and myself also, like for me, I've been doing real estate ever since I was 19. So it's not like I had a second career that was real estate. But I think for a lot of people who start investing when they're older, if you're used to making a decent salary and you want to go back to doing entry level and acquiring knowledge, you're going to take a salary hit, or you're going to end up like running errands for someone who's more experienced in that.
Yeah.
And that's like definitely a hit financially. It's a hit for your ego.
Yeah.
And it's then a social hit, because everybody around you is going to be like, what are you doing? You're working for minimum wage or less than minimum wage, and you're getting taken advantage of. Like, this is a waste of time. So I think that's a really, but that ultimately, if you ask people how they manage to succeed in this industry, there will probably be a story of a year or two of, running errands and doing unpaid work and like doing things that you have to do to acquire the knowledge that then translates into however many dollars later on.
Yeah, I think it's just to add one more thing. I think it's important for people not to get wrapped up in the social media and think, like on day 2, day 3, after a year, I should be driving this car or dealing with this type of stuff. I think it takes a lot of time to build up that knowledge, understanding, and even more so, someone that I know who is probably one of the most successful people that I associate myself with. That individual, for the first like year of his career, told me that he was hired to do serious work, but actually in the end, he ended up doing grunt work, and exactly that. He was picking up dry cleaning. He was picking up like valet cars. That wasn't part of his job, but he still did it and didn't say anything. And I can tell you with certainty it paid off. That individual is doing quite well. Okay now.
Yeah. All right. So we're just about running out of time. I have one last question for you.
Sure.
What do you think we should be talking about in our industry that's on nobody's radar?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That no one's talking about. It's a really tough question to answer. I keep on referring to it and going back to it, but I think there's two things. I think that firstly, it's the one that I've already mentioned, which is I think there's a lot of risk in real estate that people don't really seem to appreciate, or some people do and don't talk about it. And I think that's like really something that bothers me, because the average person, they see real estate and they see money sign. That to me is not at all the case. I see real estate and I see an immense amount of risk. You're dealing with serious amounts of money. You're dealing with anything you're going to buy, even if it's a duplex, then you're buying it for $600,000. Still have to come up with, could be 20%, could be 25%, could be less, but you're not talking about $1,000 here. So I think that is something that is really not spoken about that often. I feel like what's always spoken about is how busy people are, and I'm so busy and I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Okay, that's wonderful, but like, rather than talking about your wins, like what about your losses? Have you lost? Have you had issues? I think that's not spoken about. I think that's actually what just led me to realize that. I feel like whenever I'm at these forums and at these conferences and all these things, it's wonderful to speak to people, but I think that most people are really focused on how busy they are and on how successful they are. I think it's really important for people to focus sometimes on, well, okay, fine, that's great, and I'm happy for you, but it's a good question to ask. Like, what are the struggles that you had leading to where you were today, or have you had a deal recently that didn't go the way you thought it went, and what did you do to navigate that and get out of it? Because everyone loves to talk about these great stories, but I could tell you personally, I've had many situations that things have not even gone even close to the way that they were supposed to go. And I think that's something that people need to speak about a bit more, so that people around them learn from those who have made some mistakes or just have had bad luck, right? It's part of the business.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that. And like that's one of my I guess pet peeves in the industry where there's a real like lack of just realness and authenticity and vulnerability. Because I think like a lot of the time when investors get together, they like to talk about their successes, they like to talk about, the things. Everybody's a bit competitive. You want to like talk about your wins, but ultimately there's almost more to learn from the struggles and the failures, and appreciating like, look, I made this mistake, like maybe don't make it, or like this is how my path was difficult, and if you embark on this journey, expect that your path will be difficult as well. And I think that like, that's one of the things I try to do in this show by asking those kind of be off the beaten track questions, is to kind of bring some of those things into the spotlight, because I think it's important that in the industry we do not just focus on the wins, we focus on the struggles and the failures and the things from which we learned, which then allowed us to acquire the knowledge to be where we are. So
yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
So David, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, sharing your time with our listeners. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
So yeah, thank you for having me again. I appreciate that. The best thing to do would be to go on our website, www.wcmortgage.ca. And there's all of our contact information there, and we're happy to speak to anyone that has any inquiries.
Thank you so much, David. If you found this show constructive, useful, inspiring, go ahead, hit the share button, hit the like button, send it to somebody who you think could profit from this knowledge, and tune in next week. Bye-bye.